Hello, dominants and submissives. I'm Master Zahn from Ontario, and today is lecture number 10, Ego and its part in the lifestyle. Now, when people hear the word ego, they automatically think of a negative connotation to the word, but that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. It doesn't have to be a self-serving nature type thing for it to be ego-related. However, ego can be a driving force behind those things as well. Both dominants and submissives can have their egos be one of the main reasons why they're part of the lifestyle or have a partner. Some people might ask, say, how a submissive's ego can get them to serve or drive them to do better in serving. Most submissives serve for more than just making their dominant happy. They serve for a sense of fulfillment. They serve for whatever part of it they feel that they get from it, whether it's helping someone or feeling useful. Many subs want to be seen as able to serve their dom as well, or being worthy of serving their dom. They don't want to seem as though they will fail at a task, or that they're just unwilling to put in their whole effort to do it, lest they be thought of as someone who just doesn't care. This is the submissive's ego at play at this point in time, where it can drive the sub to try harder and make it seem as though they are worth being owned by their dom or worth serving their dom. Now, when people think of a dominant and their ego, they generally tend to think that that's what drives them to be a dominant in the first place. And while that may actually partly be true, that doesn't necessarily have to be the only or the largest reason. A dom's ego can drive them to need to be seen as someone who's capable and as someone who's worthy of being served. It can drive them to do better, to further their knowledge. It can even, in my case, for example, me teaching and lecturing and mentoring, starting the school, I admit all comes from parts of my ego, but it's not a bad thing that it's driven from there. For a dominant or submissive, personal growth can actually come from their ego, as their need to be seen as a true dominant or a true submissive at all times, causing them to act in a proper way or to take note of their personal appearance, their grooming, their clothing choice for the situation, even their out collars. If one's not appropriate, maybe they use an anklet. A collar doesn't always have to be a collar. It's more the symbol of it that matters. Now, having an ego is not necessarily a bad thing, as I've been explaining. Ego in itself is not a good or bad thing. Like any other emotion, it depends on how you use it. It can lead someone to try to be better, or unchecked, it can lead someone to be an abuser, all the same. Be they a true dominant or submissive, or a fake dominant or submissive. Ego can come into play either way and end up acting on either side. Although, in my opinion, fakes rarely take the time to try to learn, and they're not really worth teaching because they're not going to take the lessons that you want to teach them or that they're looking to learn even to heart. They're going to say why their way is better. Now, every person and every dynamic is unique. So for individuals and their use of their ego, it's going to be unique in what they need to do with it, what it might drive them to do. It's better to know yourself, both good and bad parts, and deny that certain aspects of them exist. If you have an ego, then there's nothing wrong with trying to use it. At one point, I almost became a submissive at the start of the dynamic because I get pleasure from serving and from feeling useful, helping others. But as a dominant, I found a way to fulfill that need with the lecturing and mentoring. I started with counseling abused submissives who wanted to stay in the lifestyle, which turned into pages. Then it turned into the book, The DS Code, that I reference now and then, and the lecture chat as well, which then became these videos. So it all depends on how you end up using it, what type of person you are to begin with. Just like being in love with someone, how it can drive you to either show them great kindness or be a creepy, weird stalker. From the same emotion to very different results on how you go about using it. Keep in mind that it's the dominant's job to protect a submissive at all time, even from themselves. A dominant shouldn't let their ego go unchecked. And it's the same for a submissive. You don't want to go overboard with trying to do too much all at once. Have your ego be the cause of harm to you. Always make sure that you go at a pace that is appropriate. Be sure that you're ready for what you're going to try, but also don't be afraid to try new things or to say why you're trying them. I'm Master Zahn. Thank you for tuning in. Please tune in for the next lecture.